Well, happy St. Patrick's Day. Today, we're talking about how to beat the crowds at Cedar Point. And my intention in this video is to make sure that you guys have good ideas of where to go and when to go to Cedar Point to beat the crowds. I know a lot of you guys are planning your trips right now. And actually, in my big overview of all of Cedar Point, that massive hour and 10-minute video that I made, I discussed all kinds of things, but one of them was kind of how to get ahead of the crowds. And I never really fleshed that out, though, partly because it's really hard to flesh out. But we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about some practical ideas for you for how to beat the crowds all around Cedar Point. And of course, the very first part of that is the time of year that you want to go. Now, again, I already addressed this just a little bit, but because not everybody wants to stick to watching a 1 hour and 10-minute video, I just wanted to get this out really, really fast. There are kind of 3 different times of year when the crowds are the lowest at Cedar Point. Now, first of all, do not come opening day if you're trying to beat crowds. If you want to go and just experience the park, then go on opening day. But opening day is very, very full of a lot of people. So if you're trying to beat out the crowds, that's not your time. You don't want to do that. Instead, you want to go earlier on in the season rather than later. Generally, again, there's going to be some caveats to this, but the opening day, not a good one. But if you come after opening week, the hype, or opening weekend, the hype has kind of gone down early on in the season. So early May to mid-May, you know, kids are still in school. You have a lot of people that are wanting to go to the parks, but really just can't go yet. And it makes it a much more comfortable experience for you as like the casual enjoyer of Cedar Point. So definitely that's a big recommendation. On top of that, you also have Thursdays during Halloweekends, which was just announced that they are actually doing Thursdays at Halloweekends. We are here today doing everything for Halloweekends on a Thursday night. I'm so excited for that because Thursdays on Halloweekends really gives you a chance to experience Cedar Point without having as many people there. So if it's at all possible for you, even just to take a day off, if you really want to enjoy Cedar Point, going there on Halloweekends and for Thursday nights on Halloweekends is good. Now, a caveat there is if you have kids, they don't have kids activities on Thursday night unless they change something this year, which is possible. And if you subscribe to this channel and hang out with us, you will see firsthand whether or not there is trick-or-treating for kids on Thursday nights, because I show you everything one piece at a time. But last year they did not have trick-or-treating on Thursday evenings. Oh. Man, you guys are lucky I'm so smooth. I'm going out with a friend tonight for St. Patty's Day. For some reason, I keep wanting to call it St. Pete's Day. Who's St. Pete? I have no idea. My pre-game on with the summer shandy may not have been a good idea. This is very acidic, and I'm an old man and I can't deal with acid. Welcome to Cedar Point. Another thing is early fall. So Thursday nights always are good. Early fall, when Halloweekends starts, is always a good time too. I will say though that Halloweekends is always busy, and really even the slowest time for Halloweekends at Cedar Point is still going to be busier than some of the busier times for the main season for Cedar Point. So if you are really looking for beating the crowds entirely, don't come for Halloweekends unless you come on Thursday nights. But if you are looking for just a little bit less of a busy experience, especially let's say if you have kids and you really want to do Halloweekends with your kids also, but you want them to experience trick-or-treating and all that kind of stuff, then coming earlier on in the season is way better than coming later in the season, because the earlier part of the season, people are less, holiday crazed. And then as the season progresses, Halloweekends just ramps up more and more and more, and lines get longer. And you can check all that stuff out also on my channel for the 2021 season. There is a playlist on my channel, and I'll link it in this video also. We are on our way to Cedar Point right now. Probably the best time you can come to Cedar Point is the week between regular season and Halloweekends. If you come that week is by far the least busy time of the year. So that was just a quick recap of what we've already talked about. Now let's talk about if you are in the parks. A lot of times you're going to want to come to the parks regardless of whether it's busy or not. You have that week off for vacation, or you've planned something with family or friends. It doesn't matter if it's busy or not busy, that's when you're gonna be there. And a lot of people are in that boat because that's just the way vacations work. If you are planning to come to the park, in the middle of July or late June, you're going to have busy park times, especially if you get into July, early August, and the times when school is out of session entirely. You just have everybody trying to get there all the time. The weekdays are going to be less busy, of course. So weekdays are always better than choosing, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. Those days are definitely, without a doubt, the busiest days. When you decide to brave those crowds, there are some good ways for you to beat the crowds. First of all, like I said in the last video, think opposite of the way most people would be thinking. And this is where I'm going to flesh that out a little bit more. So my recommendation is always particularly to stay away from the most visual rides when you first come in. So you walk into Cedar Point, and the first thing that hits you as you walk in, you walk under Gatekeeper, first of all, but fewer people know where the Gatekeeper entrance is. So Gatekeeper is actually a little bit more of a safe bet, even though that seems counterintuitive. And a lot of this is counterintuitive. You walk in further and you see this massive green thing, and that massive green thing is Raptor. And every time I walk in, I even immediately think, Raptor, yes, that's a great one to go visit first. No, don't hit that first. That is a end of the night ride. You do not want to ride that in the first 2 or 3 hours at the park, because every single person who comes in, and they're not even necessarily rubes to Cedar Point, they're just people who have been to Cedar Point every year, but they come every year to Cedar Point. They want to ride it, and they end up standing in an hour and 15-minute wait for Raptor, because they think, well, it's not the big rides at the back, and if Raptor is an hour and 15 minutes, how much more is Steel Vengeance going to be right now? So then they just go, well, we might as well just hop in line for Raptor. No, Raptor will get a much, much lower line at the end of the night. If you come at sundown, Raptor's going to be a 30-minute wait instead of an hour and 15 minutes. So that's much more worthwhile for you to be able to save some time. So my big thing is, if it is a visual thing where you can immediately see both the ride and the entrance for the ride and figure that out really fast. So we're talking Raptor, we're talking Valraven. Those two rides in particular, you do not want to hit right away, because everyone's thinking we'll hit those rides when they first come in. Instead, go somewhere in the middle. So by the middle part, I am talking Millennium Force in particular, Rougarou, Magnum, and Gemini in particular. I guess, again, you could also do Corkscrew with that. But those are kind of your middle rides, where they're not at the front of the park. They're also not at the back of the park. So they're kind of what I consider to be the middle part of the park. That area is where you definitely want to hit first. I recommend going over to Millennium Force because that is the ride that is the most easy to be able to get to, ride it, and it's such a big ride and it's going to get such a massive line later. There's a good chance you're going to see some hour to hour and a half lines for Millennium Force, and I never recommend waiting in a line longer than an hour, definitely, for Millennium Force. But if you look at the other side, Gemini and Magnum, Gemini and Magnum are going to get longer lines, but probably never longer than 45 minutes for either one of those. So even then, like, if you don't hit those as fast, they're gonna be a little bit lower lines for longer, if that makes sense. So I would definitely recommend going to Millennium Force, hitting that up. If the train stops you, hit up Rougarou on your way, but Rougarou is probably your better bet also for the evening. Do not hit Rougarou in the middle of the day. The middle of the day is a bad time for Rougarou. If you get between like 2 and 5 o'clock, that's when the bad time is for Rougarou, because everyone's spent all their day riding all the big rides, and now they're just trying to hit the smaller ones. So you'll see that it accrues a much longer line in the middle of the day. If nothing else, always with any of these rides, it's always good to just check back on the channel and see what I'm actually discovering, because things do change just a little bit. But another rule of thumb, for which this video is filled with a lot of rules of thumb, because everything is a little bit uncertain. You never know. Sometimes even I'm eluded. Who knows? Every once in a while you end up with an hour and 20-minute line for Iron Dragon, but it doesn't happen that often, you know? So you just never know exactly what you're going to get. It depends on what kind of audience is actually at Cedar Point that day. But another rule of thumb is do not start your day with the rides at the back of the park. Steel Vengeance and Maverick are by far the two most popular, longest lines that you are going to have at Cedar Point. You don't want to go ride those two rides when you are when you're first coming in, because you're going to immediately get that 2-hour line when you could be hitting Millennium Force when it's a 20-minute line instead of it being a 50-minute line later on in the day. So I always would recommend hit the other rides that are going to have longer lines. At the end of the day, there are several rides that become much smaller. Now, I'm not going to lump Valraven in on this one because Valraven ends up, even though I would say Valraven and Raptor are kind of in a similar type of a category, Raptor does lose steam at the end of the day quite a bit. Valraven does not. And that's the thing that I think you need to keep in mind, is that Valraven is kind of one of those big ones. So all four of the big ones, Valraven, Millennium Force, Steel Vengeance, and Maverick, are rides that you're not going to want to ride at the end of the night, because everybody is trying to ride those rides at the end of the evening. And we'll get to that, put a pin in that right now. So definitely always walk away from the most visible rides, and also walk away from the rides that are the most big name rides, with the exception of Millennium Force. Walk away from those in the mornings, hit them later, because while those rides have huge lines at the beginning of the day, which you're gonna have to stand in anyway, you're gonna have to stand in probably at least an hour and a half of a line for Steel Vengeance, regardless of when you go. If you go in the morning, hour and a half. If you go in the evening, an hour and a half. You're gonna have to hit it. But you don't have to stand in a 45-minute line for Magnum. And you don't have to stand in a 45-minute line for Corkscrew or a 30-minute line for Gemini. So instead, you can save time on those smaller rides, including Millennium Force, because it's just overshadowed by the other big three. You can save time on those rides instead of riding the big rides first. Now, the only exception to that rule is if you have a pass and you have early entry. If you have early entry, I definitely recommend, as long as you're at the very front of that early entry crowd, going straight back and hitting Maverick, Steel Vengeance, or riding the rides at the very front. If you walk past Raptor, like I did toward the end of the year a couple of times last year, and you see that Raptor really does actually have a 20-minute wait, then hop in it. Or if there's nobody in line, even better, hop in that line. Usually Raptor will have a much longer line than that, but all of these, like I said, have caveats. And if you happen to see a line that really is smaller, again, you'll know it by watching videos. If you're watching these videos and you see me pan the line, it says it's a 20-minute line, and then we get up to the loading dock and it is a 20-minute line, or maybe less than that, then you'll actually know how big the line looks. If you've seen it enough times, you'll know what to expect when the line comes back to a certain spot. So definitely keep an eye out for what the lines may actually look like. But if the line is actually smaller than you think it's going to be, then hop in it. Do it right then. That's a much better idea to be able to do, so that you are able to have extra time in your day. If you can get something out that really is going to be a short line that would normally be a long one, then always do that. I'm just giving you as many rules of thumb as I possibly can in this video. Now, another rule of thumb is your Cedar Point app. And I would say your Cedar Point app is a very loose rule of thumb. The problem with the Cedar Point app is that a lot of times the numbers are very inaccurate. Like this last year, I didn't even do are the numbers actually completely accurate video, because they were so wildly off from time to time. There were multiple times when Rougarou said like an hour and 10 minutes last year, and it was literally just a 10-minute wait. So that's why I say actually walking into the line and seeing what it's at, especially if you don't see just tons of people walking in and walking out, is worthwhile, because there's a good chance a lot of times that the lines are not as long as they may seem, or that the lines are longer. There were also other times when Rougarou said 15 minutes and it was a 45-minute wait. So that's why, to me, this is a very loose one. The Cedar Point app is a good place for you to look to get like a minor idea and where the lines are big or small in the park on that day. Just always take the app with a grain of salt anyway. Probably my biggest tip when it comes to trying to beat the crowds on the rides is that you want to save the last 30 minutes for your big ride. A lot of the big lines will close. So if you haven't done all of your big rides for the day, you haven't hit all four of them, then if the line is like over 30 or 40 minutes, the park employees are going to close down the line.
That is so frustrating. I still had some time even. They said, no, we had to close early. No, you didn't.
So if they close down the line, you're not going to get to ride it in the last 15 minutes. So instead, if you really want to hit Steel Vengeance, and it's your last big ride of the 4 that you need to hit that day, you need to get there a half hour before the park closes. A lot of times the line will be shorter at that point also, which could be good, but usually you're going to have to wait in line for at least a half hour if that is the case. So just so that you don't lose that opportunity, I would hate it if people walk back to Steel Vengeance. I did this a couple times last year. Walk back to Steel Vengeance and find a line that is too big for me to stand in at the time. And if that line is too big for you, you're gonna have to turn away dejected, and it's a sad, sad thing.
Ooh, no. No.
So don't let that happen. Instead, get there a little bit early and plan that last half hour for the last big ride that you have. If you decide not to do that, and let's say you've ridden all the big rides already, then use that time to like hit some flat rides. Last year in a half hour, I think I was able to hit like 6 flat rides in a half hour. So that was definitely an accomplishment. So if you have that opportunity, it also had rained that day. There's reasons for it. But if you have that opportunity to ride some other smaller rides, that's a good opportunity to do that in. There are other places at Cedar Point where you can kind of beat the crowds. The smoking areas, or they used to be smoking areas. They're not anymore, but you will know these places by just being a big piece of cement that has a lot of chairs all around it. During the masking time with COVID, these areas were actually used as like mask off areas. So you could go in there, sit down, relax, take your mask off, and just kind of relax for a little while. We don't need masks anymore this year, but those areas are great areas to go visit, where you can just kind of take a load off, settle down. If your kids are really upset, or let's say one of them needs a nap. When I went to Cedar Point as a young dad, when my daughter was 3 years old, I would take my daughter to go find napping locations because she took 2 naps a day. If your kids need a nap, those are great places to go. They're out of the way. You can hear the roar of the roller coasters, but you don't have tons and tons of people around you all the time. One of those other smoking areas is actually at the back of the barnyard, but the barnyard is a great place to go visit too. And of course, again, if you have kids, what a great place to go and, see the animals. It's really nice to be able to see all the animals. You can, again, relax just a little bit. There's a place even to wash your hands if you're just feeling grimy from the day. Or if you've pet the animals and then you need to wash your hands, that's another reason why you might want to do that. And then that's a great location just to relax, settle down, and take a load off, get yourself away from people, and you don't want to have to be touching stinky, smelly people all day. I get that. It's fine. Another location, and I would really stress this one, if you're really peopled out from the day, get out of Cedar Point. Go to the beach. Cedar Point is one of the only places where there's that kind of private access to a natural resource, the beach. So go use the beach. Now, the beach also, or the boardwalk, may be very full of people. But if you keep walking north on the boardwalk, if you don't turn left on the boardwalk at the end of Breakers Hotel, and instead you continue kind of actually to the right through the reeds on the boardwalk, you'll continue down to Lighthouse Point, and that is entirely people free. You can take a nice little walk. If you are a smoker, that's a great place to go smoke also, and you don't have to feel quite so constrained from just constantly having people close to you, smelling people, looking at people, judging people, having them judge you, all that kind of stuff. On the other side of the park is the marina. Go check out the marina. Go check out the marina restaurants. I have not done that this year. For all I know, it could be just packed with people, but I don't think it is. So go check that area out. I think you could probably walk up and down the piers a little bit and just kind of have a restaurant that isn't as well known out there, where you can do a little bit of walking. You can sit, have some food, get a drink, You know, get some stuff that just gives you some R&R. We all need that from time to time, and I definitely want to give you guys the best advice I possibly can on being able to take care of yourself as well as possible in the parks. Another great place to go visit, especially if the Frontier Festival isn't going on, although even during the Frontier Festival, this is still a decent place. Between the train station and Maverick's entrance, there are several seating areas right there along the pathway. Also a couple different pathways that kind of have some various heights. In that area, nobody really has much occasion to walk from one spot to the other. Unless you're going to the train station, even if you're going between Steel Vengeance and Maverick, you generally don't have any reason to cut through that part where there's those nice rocking chairs and where you can kind of sit and relax and people watch. That is probably your best area to go take a break and get away from people, besides maybe Lighthouse Point. But this gives more people watching ability. You can see people off in the distance. There are lots of people there. Also a great opportunity for if you have a kid and you need to rock them to sleep for nap time. Great opportunity for that. Let them kind of just sit in your lap and rock back and forth on one of those nice wooden rocking chairs. Great area to do that in also. Heads and tails above any of these even would be going back to Forbidden Frontier. In the Forbidden Frontier area, especially if you have kids, if you don't have kids, it might feel kind of creepy, but would be going back to the Frontier, to the Forbidden Frontier area. They do have the rocking chairs. They also have hammocks. They have chairs all around. There's a playground area. There are 3 bathrooms, and during peak times, there's a restaurant that's open back there. There are all kinds of different activities you can do, especially for kids. If you are a parent and you're just looking to get away from people, go back there 100%. The reason why I didn't recommend it is because if adults are just back there, it's gonna feel weird. Like if you're just walking back there, just hanging out, sleeping in a hammock, might feel kind of weird. But if you have kids and you're going back there, it's an awesome place to go visit, and it really would give you a lot of relaxation abilities. Tell me down below in the comments, what is your favorite place to go visit to escape the crowds at Cedar Point? Where can you go, and is there any place more hidden than the places I've talked about? Because there very well may be some places that you can think of that would be much, much better. So share your wisdom down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. Also, leave a like, press that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Like I said, we will be talking about all of these things, and not just talking about them, but directly looking at them so that you understand what the best tips and tricks are at Cedar Point. You can see my fails, you can see my successes, and hopefully we can learn a lot this season. So definitely press that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Let's go!